If you bought like $1 million luxury sports car
Oh, right.
and the suspension was just so incredibly rigid that it practically shattered your spine on a quick 10-minute drive to the grocery store, you would return it immediately, right?
Oh, absolutely. You wouldn't even think twice.
Exactly. You wouldn't care how pristine the paint was or, how many heads it turned on the street. Yet every single day, millions of us strap on these incredibly expensive, heavily branded sports gear items that, well, they restrict our blood flow. They pinch our joints.
Yeah, they completely ignored the biological reality of how our bodies actually move.
Right.
We basically end up treating our own biomechanics worse than that hypothetical car. I mean, people pay this massive premium for the hood ornament, right?
Yeah.
The giant recognizable logo printed across the chest.
Or stitched into the thigh.
Yeah, exactly. But the physical machinery underneath that logo is entirely mismatched to the reality of the human kinetic chain.
Which brings us to what we're getting into today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We've got a really interesting stack of source materials centered around a rising brand called ENKII Sport.
Right, and we are unpacking their approach today because they represent this massive seismic shift happening right now across the entire fitness and wellness industry.
Yeah, we're basically looking at the end of that flashy, superficial hype era, and it's a necessary pivot toward actual human biomechanics and functional recovery. And our mission today is to figure out why this is happening.
Because honestly, whether your personal goal is to train for an ultra marathon or you are literally just trying to get through an 8-hour shift at your desk without your lower back screaming in pain, the shift directly impacts your daily movement.
So to understand the foundation of this whole industry-wide shift, we have to look at who is actually sitting at the grafting table designing these products.
Right, the origin story, because historically, the sports apparel and recovery gear markets, they were dictated by corporate executives sitting in these sterile boardrooms.
Yeah, just looking at quarterly market data.
Exactly. Chasing aesthetic trends, running focus groups to figure out, which celebrity face could move the most inventory.
The drafting table was just completely disconnected from the gym floor or the physical therapy clinic. But hold on, I have to push back here for a second.
Sure, go for it.
You literally cannot walk through a mall today without seeing some massive poster for a brand claiming their gear is, quote unquote, built by athletes, for athletes. I mean, it is the oldest marketing cliche in the playbook.
Oh, 100%. It's everywhere.
Right. So if every single brand on the market says they have athletes designing their gear, what makes this specific origin story actually different from the billboard down the street?
Well, it really comes down to the distinction between an athlete who merely licenses their name for a brand endorsement and the actual health professionals, recovery specialists, and biomechanists who are genuinely engineering the textiles.
Okay, so the people actually building the stuff.
Right. The source material emphasizes that ENKII Sport was not formed by a traditional corporate hierarchy. It was founded by people who actually spend their days dealing with the harsh clinical realities of, training trauma, injury rehabilitation, localized muscle protection.
So it's a completely different perspective.
Totally. When a corporate designer makes a knee sleeve, they are mostly thinking about where the logo goes, right?
Right.
Or what colorway pops best on an Instagram feed, or just maximizing profit margins.
Right, the aesthetics.
Yeah, but when a physical therapist or a recovery specialist designs that exact same sleeve, they're looking at things like patellar tracking, hinge points, compression gradients, and localized blood flow.
Okay, wait, let's pause on that.
Right.
What exactly is a compression gradient? Because I see that term thrown around in premium packaging all the time, and I've always wondered, is it just like tighter fabric?
No, it is much more sophisticated than just being tight. Think of it kind of like a tube of toothpaste.
A tube of toothpaste. Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah. A true compression gradient is tightest at the furthest extremity, so say down at the ankle. And it gradually, mathematically decreases in pressure as it moves up the calf toward the heart.
Oh, wow. So it's not just uniform tightness.
Exactly. It acts as an external, one-way biological valve. When you exercise, or even if you just stand on your feet all day, deoxygenated blood and metabolic waste, like lactic acid, they pull in your lower extremities just because of gravity.
Right, that heavy leg feeling.
Yes. Your veins have these tiny internal valves to push that blood back up, but they get overworked. So the compression gradient physically assists your circulatory system. It forces that fluid back up so it doesn't just sit there causing tissue inflammation.
So instead of just squeezing the leg uniformly like some kind of tourniquet, it's actually mimicking the pumping action of the muscles themselves.
Precisely. And you just do not arrive at that kind of highly functional design unless the creators intimately understand the physiological mechanics of recovery.
Which makes sense as to why people are catching on.
Yeah, there is massive consumer fatigue right now. People are tired of paying premium prices for gear that provides zero actual physiological benefit, and that fatigue is driving this huge demand for hyper-focused engineering.
And that lived experience from those clinical designers, it really translates into what the source text calls their core rallying cry, which is stop paying for logos, start paying for performance.
Yes, I love that line.
But, performance is kind of a loaded word in this space. I mean, the old model of sports performance, the one that really dominated fitness culture for decades, was entirely centered around punishment.
Oh, the classic no pain, no gain mentality.
Exactly.
It viewed the human body as this stubborn machine that you just had to force into compliance through sheer willpower.
Yeah, the prevailing idea back then was that if a joint was hurting, you were just supposed to wrap it in stiff athletic tape, totally ignore your biological warning signals, and just keep lifting heavier.
Which is wild when you think about it now.
It is. Because pushing through structural joint pain without proper mechanical support, it isn't like running out of gas and hoping your enthusiasm keeps the engine running. It's like driving a car on a flat tire.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
Right. Like the engine might still be incredibly strong, but you are systematically destroying the rim and the axle with every single rotation of the wheel.
That flat tire analogy perfectly illustrates the biological reality here. I mean, muscle tissue is not actually built when you lift a heavy weight.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the myofibrils in the muscle are actually physically torn during exertion. The actual growth, the strengthening, and the protein synthesis, that only happens during the rest phase.
So the workout is just the damage part.
Exactly. So that old mentality of relentless punishing intensity was literally interrupting the only biological phase where progress actually occurs. ENKII Sport operates on this principle we see mapped out in our sources that recovery is not a weakness.
Or just an afterthought you tack on to the end of a session.
Right. Recovery is the fundamental prerequisite for performance.
There's actually a quote from a consumer in the source document that highlights this perfectly. I wanted to read this. They wrote, "Finally, a sports brand that actually understands athletes and recovery."
I think that points to a much broader shift, too. People are realizing they don't have to just endure chronic inflammation to stay active.
Yeah, consumers have become incredibly discerning, right? They aren't just blindly following a celebrity face on a billboard anymore.
Not at all. They're reading clinical reviews, they're researching material breathability, checking durability specifications, and they're actively looking for authentic biomechanical support.
Because they understand the stakes now.
Yeah, they know that ignoring the recovery phase inevitably leads to central nervous system burnout and long-term musculoskeletal degradation. The demand has totally shifted toward gear that actively facilitates tissue repair while you are still moving.
Now, a philosophy about, recovery as performance sounds phenomenal on paper. But we have to translate that biological theory into a physical object that you actually wrap around your body.
Right, the actual gear.
The source document lists this pretty extensive product lineup. They've got knee braces, compression sleeves, ankle support, wrist support, shoulder stabilization, back support.
It's a really comprehensive list.
It is. But let me play devil's advocate here. You can go to any local pharmacy right now, spend like $10, and get a thick neoprene knee sleeve. If the goal is just to add some joint support, isn't spending premium money on this advanced gear just falling for the same marketing spin we were just criticizing?
That is a very fair question. But the difference between a generic pharmacy sleeve and engineered biomechanical gear is basically the difference between restriction and stabilization.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, that $10 neoprene sleeve is usually just a uniform tube of really thick rubber. It traps ambient heat, it causes localized sweating, and most importantly, it severely restricts your natural mobility.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. It bunches up horribly right behind the knee joint every time you bend your leg.
Exactly. It creates this awful tourniquet effect right where you need the most flexibility.
Yeah, I've worn those before, and after 10 minutes, the back of your knee is just completely raw and chafed.
And that restriction fundamentally alters your natural gait. If your knee sleeve is so bulky and stiff that it changes how you walk or run, you're suddenly throwing off the alignment of your hips and your lower lumbar spine just to compensate for the bulky brace.
So the cure is actually causing secondary problems.
Exactly. And Enkiii Sport's innovation in this space is actually defined by what they intentionally avoid doing.
What do you mean by that?
They refuse to make gear that is stiff, heavy, or over-engineered. They focus purely on providing crucial joint stability without compromising your body's natural kinetic chain of movement.
So how do they actually achieve that stability without the bulk? If
Yeah.
they aren't using those thick, rigid plastic or neoprene materials, what is providing the mechanical support?
They use targeted microcompression and highly breathable fabrics that map directly to the anatomy of the joint.
Oh, so it's customized to the shape of the body part.
Yes. Take the knee, for instance. A properly engineered brace utilizes dynamic tension zones. It might be knit much tighter around the patellar tendon to provide stability to the kneecap, but then it uses a highly flexible porous weave directly behind the knee.
Which solves that bunching problem we talked about.
Exactly. That ensures there is no bunching and absolutely no restriction of the popliteal artery, which is super vital for supplying oxygenated blood down to the lower leg.
That makes total sense.
And beyond just blood flow, a well-engineered sleeve actually improves proprioception.
Okay, proprioception. What does that mean in this specific context?
Proprioception is basically your brain's ability to sense exactly where your joints are in three-dimensional space.
Like knowing where your foot is without looking at it.
Right. Your skin and your joints are full of these little mechanoreceptors. When you wear a precisely engineered compression sleeve, it provides this continuous sensory feedback to those receptors.
Oh, so it's constantly talking to your nervous system.
Exactly. It essentially reminds your brain to stabilize that specific joint, which improves your balance and mechanical alignment naturally without needing a giant, rigid piece of plastic to hold the joint in place.
That is fascinating. And the marketing strategy the sources describe is also surprisingly restrained for this industry. They aren't out here promising that slipping on an ankle brace is going to magically shave 2 minutes off your 5K time.
Or turn you into an Olympic sprinter overnight, right?
Exactly.
That honest marketing is a really crucial part of this whole shift toward authenticity. They are focusing strictly on support, stability, and reducing inflammation. It's a modern, lightweight design born entirely from the necessity of needing to train while managing pain.
Without making those false, pseudoscientific promises about sudden superhuman abilities.
Exactly. Just pure functional support.
And think about everyday life. I mean, everyday life is putting so much repetitive strain on our joints that just wrapping a cheap piece of elastic around a knee is clearly not a long-term fix.
Definitely not.
Because they designed this gear to be breathable and comfortable for hours at a time, it naturally broke out of the professional sports arena. The source material is very explicit about who is actually buying this gear now, and spoiler alert, it is not just professional athletes.
Right. They list gym members and runners, of course. But the bulk of this rapidly expanding demographic includes people like warehouse workers, frequent travelers, office workers dealing with chronic back pain, and active older adults.
I mean, if you just think about the physical mechanics of a typical day, maybe you are running a marathon this weekend, but lifting a 40-pound toddler from the floor, twisting your torso to strap them into a car seat, or, lugging a heavy suitcase through a sprawling airport terminal.
Oh, the airport sprint is a real athletic event.
It really is. Those actions require complex, multi-joint coordination under load. Even just sitting in an office chair for 8 hours straight places enormous static compression on your lumbar spine.
Yeah, the discs in your back are constantly being squeezed.
Exactly. And that daily wear and tear requires the exact same biomechanical respect and the exact same mechanical support as a professional athletic event.
We are seeing a macro-level realization across the medical community right now that everyday life is an endurance sport.
Everyday life is an endurance sport. I love that phrasing.
It's true. When a warehouse worker spends a 12-hour shift walking on solid concrete floors while repeatedly lifting heavy boxes, the repetitive sheer stress on their knees and their lower back is arguably higher and far more sustained than someone playing a quick 60-minute basketball game.
Right. It's the sustained physiological toll of standing on concrete all day versus the acute stress of a quick sprint.
And historically, the wellness industry has completely ignored that worker. Professional gear was just way too bulky and rigid to wear under work pants.
And the cheap pharmacy gear was too uncomfortable and sweaty to wear for a full 12-hour shift.
Right. So providing lightweight, continuous stability and comfort to non-athletes, it represents a major paradigm shift. It acknowledges that human movement, regardless of the context, requires mechanical support to prevent the long-term degradation of our joints.
And recognizing everyday life as an endurance sport means we have to actually start healing the tissue while we move. We can't just wait until we are finally lying in bed at night to start the recovery process.
Absolutely not. You have to be proactive.
And the source text actually dives into the cutting edge of recovery technology here. They're moving past just woven fabrics and getting into things like hydrogel recovery pads, sports therapy support, and rehabilitation-oriented compression products.
Yeah, the integration of materials like hydrogel is currently one of the fastest growing sectors in the entire fitness and sports wellness landscape.
Okay, so what exactly is a hydrogel?
Well, hydrogels are essentially these complex networks of cross-linked polymer chains that can hold a massive amount of water.
Like a sponge at a microscopic level?
Sort of, yes. In a recovery context, they are engineered to create localized, sustained cooling or heating effects directly against the skin. And they do it without the mess of melting ice packs or the risk of chemical burns from those traditional heat patches.
Oh, that's huge. So instead of finishing a grueling workout or, really long shift at work and having to just sit motionless on the couch with a bag of frozen peas leaking all over your leg,
We've all been there.
we really have. But instead of that, you can apply a hydrogel pad that continuously draws heat away from the inflamed tissue while you are literally still walking around and living your life.
That continuous active recovery is the key. By maintaining a specific controlled temperature profile over the joint or the muscle belly, hydrogels can significantly reduce the localized inflammatory response.
So they literally cool down the inflammation.
Yes, they slow down the metabolic rate of the injured tissue, which limits secondary tissue damage. And less inflammation means less pain and a much faster return to normal tissue function. And this kind of technology used to be strictly confined to the back rooms and athletic training rooms of professional sports franchises. Now it is being integrated into consumer-level gear that anyone can just wear discreetly under their clothes.
That is incredible. So as we look at these targeted compression gradients, these advanced polymer networks, is recovery tech going to become a household staple? Like, are we going to have a dedicated active recovery drawer right next to the standard first aid kit in our homes?
The trajectory of the industry strongly suggests exactly that. I mean, the overarching theme of these source materials is essentially a mathematical certainty. Smarter, more accessible recovery equals better endurance and a drastic reduction in chronic injuries.
It just makes logical sense.
It does. Brands like ENKII Sport are positioned perfectly right now because they act as a vital bridge. They take the advanced biomechanical concepts required for intense, short-term sports performance, and they apply them directly to long-term wellness and daily mobility.
Bringing it to the masses.
Yeah, they make sustained, high-level body care accessible to the general public.
It really feels like we are moving away from a culture that just punished the body for the sake of a plastic trophy. And instead, we're moving toward an infrastructure that sustains the mechanics of the body for a longer, healthier life.
A much-needed change.
Truly. And the strongest brands, the ones that are actually going to survive and define the next decade of this industry, are the ones built by people who genuinely understand the biology of the problems they're trying to solve.
It really just comes down to authentic design born from real-world clinical application rather than just endlessly chasing the next big marketing trend.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to see how these biomechanical concepts actually look in practice, you can explore their recovery and performance lineup for yourself. Their website is www.enkiisport.com. Again, that is www.enkiisport.com. Their official slogan really does summarize the whole structural shift we've unpacked today. It's simply performance, recovery, next level. Definitely keep their central mantra in your head the next time you are looking at gear. Remember, stop paying for logos, start paying for performance. But before we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over on your own.
Let's hear it.
As our workout gear and our everyday clothing become increasingly engineered for active recovery with, integrated hydrogel technology and dynamic compression zones, will the line between a medical rehabilitation device and everyday apparel eventually disappear entirely?
That is a fascinating question.
Right. What does the future of getting dressed look like when your clothes actively heal you?